This is the Tech Alley. I am Tabiso, and he is.
How's it, everyone? It's Bonga Mangale here, Don Lizes, boy of tech. See, I've switched off my introduction now.
Unbelievable.
What do you think of that one?
The listeners will tell us. I have no words. I have no
I'm
idea what
trying
to
to make this
say.
thing a bit more interesting, man. You've been complaining about how my thing is swag, right? So I'm just trying to make it a bit more interesting for myself and for my listeners, and probably not even feel less awkward.
Nah, it's for the listeners. It's for the listeners and the viewers. The listeners and the viewers must
Yeah,
know who you are when you enter the stage.
I know. I'll
Yeah.
be fine.
Big week,
So
big week. Lots of things happening.
yeah, yes,
SA
it is.
is a mess. How was the rain this weekend, bruh?
Wow, on my way to Power FM on Saturday morning, my car slipped off the freeway a little bit on the fast lane. I wasn't moving too fast, luckily, but I did feel a little shift in the ground underneath me, so that got me a little scared. And
So you were saved by something called traction.
pretty much. I understand now why expensive cars are so expensive, because they do things that we wouldn't even know about. I'm sure if I was still
So
in my
Bo-
pole, I would have slipped.
So Bonga probably tried to throw the car out of whack, and the car was telling him, "What are you doing? What are you doing?
I
What are you
was
doing?"
driving like a normal Joburg citizen who drives a BMW in Joburg. So,
Oh yes,
I
yes.
mean,
For our listeners and our viewers that don't know, Bonga is one of those. Doesn't use his indicator.
no. I do, Chief.
Rarely ever uses his
I do.
brake. Just changes lanes whenever he feels like it. Doesn't respect the speed limits of the road. And
No,
then
I do. I'm a model citizen.
when you ask him what he drives, he's like, "Of course, it's a Beamer."
I'm a model citizen of how a person who owns a car brand is supposed to drive. I can promise you that much.
If he's a model citizen that drives the car brand the way it's supposed to be driven, that tells you everything you need to know about that.
Come on, don't do me like that.
Yo, what's the first story of the week that we got to discuss?
I think what people have been hearing quite a lot about over the last couple of weeks, and is still reigning high in the news cycle, is the coronavirus.
Yeah, coronavirus is a
And
big
for
thing.
those that don't know by now, the coronavirus obviously is a respiratory disease that has killed around 900 people so
Yep.
far, which is the highest since SARS from 2003.
Yeah.
And it's really changing. It's affecting a whole lot of global trade and global travel.
Yep.
But what is less discussed actually is how the coronavirus has actually affected tech and tech production in a lot of ways. I mean, we've seen that over the last couple of days, a lot of companies have closed down or shut down their operations. Major tech companies have temporarily shut down right now, including all of Apple, Samsung, Microsoft, Tesla, and even Google. And they're moving, those that can are keeping their operations in either
Yeah.
Taiwan or Hong Kong. And it's expected that they will be in place. It's actually supposed to have opened by yesterday, because they're hoping that the virus is going to be gone by then. But the looks of things, it's extending.
So China had basically shut down the country for 2 weeks. So if you worked in a manufacturing plant in the center of the country, you were told to stay home for 2 weeks. And today, people were told to go back to work. And I actually saw a picture on Twitter of a guy in a train in Shanghai in peak hour traffic in a train, or in rush hour between 6 and 8 in Shanghai, and there was 4 people in the carriage that he was sitting in, and he said normally there'd be over 100 people in the carriage that he was sitting in. So that tells you that all the people that are supposed to be going back to work cannot go to work. And I mean, we've seen company after company announce how they are going to be impacted by the coronavirus.
Indeed. So companies after companies are actually even blocking travel. Facebook has warned against its employees traveling to China for any work-related purposes, even
Yep.
though Facebook doesn't have an office in China. Foxconn, which builds the processors for
For
some
the
of the
Apple
iPhones,
and the iPads,
has also halted production.
They are actually they're one of their major plants is about 200 kilometers away from Wuhan, which was the center of the virus. So they actually had to shut down the whole plant and have no workers around at all. Now the difficulty was workers and people in general were trying to move out of Hebei province where Wuhan is.
And so again, I think that now, as any listener would have deduced by now, that affects delivery of new
Yep.
tech and new gadgets. For starters, Tesla is has delayed delivery of orders for the Tesla Model 3
Yep.
because of this. We might expect a couple of delays in new phones that will be expected for this year. We already know that the iPhone 9
Yep.
from Apple might experience a delay because of this. It was supposed to have came out in Feb. It was coming out this month.
Yes.
However, it was announced this month to come out in March, but there's a huge possibility that that might not happen anymore because of the coronavirus coming into play. And what's even more interesting that I actually discovered earlier today was that the Mobile World Conference
Mobile World Congress,
is
yes.
also been affected by this. So for those that don't know, the Mobile World Congress is where most of these phone makers actually meet the beginning of the year to start telling us about the phones that they expect to release over the course of the year. Normally, it's attended by the big guys, your Samsungs and the likes. Apple doesn't necessarily attend
No.
because it does its own thing in
Does its own
September.
thing.
But all the other major tech companies that build smartphones actually meet there, and it was supposed to be in Barcelona this year, or it is in Barcelona this year, but it's expected to be a ghost town because a whole lot of those companies, especially those that are based in countries surrounding China, or even China for that matter, or have employees that frequent China, will not attend the Congress because of fears that they might either be aiding in the spreading of the virus or would expose their own employees to any potential risk of people that might be there that have contracted the virus already.
Exactly. There's already estimates of putting into numbers what the virus is going to cost you that are listening to this show right now. So the coronavirus is expected to cost the global economy $280 billion in the first quarter of this year. So that's just Jan, Feb, March. So if you think that the coronavirus will not impact you, if you're planning on buying a new car, if you're planning on buying any food that is imported, if you are planning on buying any clothes that are imported, especially if you shop at a shop like Zara or an H&M, all of that stuff is going to be impacted by what is currently happening in China.
Because loss in trade, loss in production, loss in sales, all of that.
Correct.
And SARS, by a large measure, only cost the global economy around about $40 billion.
Yep.
So this is almost a 7-time deficit that we've experienced in just 3 months alone. And funny enough, if you've checked the movement in the stock market, most of the companies that are involved in travel and tourism are losing quite big in this, and then companies that are building respiratory devices or asthma pumps like 3M, for example,
Yeah.
have gained quite significantly from this. So then it
So-
makes you wonder, is this really a thing that they can't really control, or is it started because someone needs to eat?
So here's the thing that really shocked me. So 3M is one of the biggest makers in the world of face masks. And when the virus broke out, face masks were being sold out in the United States and in Europe, and the virus hadn't even yet arrived. So
So
you
then
can
who
understand
knew?
the impact of what has been happening and how this has impacted people all around the world. Movement of people has also been impacted, and again, a lot of the technology that we use and how we talk to each other and how we move around is run by a lot of these technology platforms. So we spoke about Facebook, we spoke about Twitter, Instagram, the likes. They have a lot of people that work in and around those areas, especially when we talk about Taiwan and Hong Kong, where all of the big tech companies have big presence because those are not necessarily tied to mainland China. They are more democratic states, especially Hong Kong and Taiwan. Now, what I really find interesting is that a lot of big airlines have been slow to cancel flights to China, but as the virus has caught on, they've started canceling flights at a faster rate. And the other people that are also struggling and losing a lot of business is luxury cruise liners. So you would have seen recently there was a luxury cruise liner that was leaving Singapore, Thailand, I think it was, and it had 20 people on board confirmed with the coronavirus when it left the harbor. And then during transit, the guys on the medical team on the ship confirmed that this had now grown to 38 cases. So cruise liners are also losing business. Cruise line, I mean, their share prices have also tanked. Airline share prices have also gone down, and more, such as British Airways, US Airways, Delta Airlines, Air France, a lot of even Etihad that have flights to mainland China are cancelling their flights to mainland China.
So then I think it's then safe to warn our listeners that if anyone is waiting for an order coming from abroad and you don't want to wait for it for long, like you know how people will be complaining about how they bought things from Wish, for
Yes.
example. If it's taking you 4 months
AliExpress.
to if it is taking you 4 months to get it on a normal cycle, it might just take you close to a year right now at the rate that things are going because of this virus. I want us to just quickly touch on the full list of actual companies that have announced that they're no longer attending the Mobile World Congress, and that's Sony, Amazon, Nvidia, LG Electronics, ZTE, and Ericsson. That is,
They are no longer sending anyone from their companies.
Yeah, no one is going to the Congress from their companies. So essentially, it's going to be literally a ghost town. Might as well postpone it to another time until the virus is being put under control. So then I think it's important just to be on the lookout and know that what is going on around how the virus is affecting you. And that's why I wanted to start off with this, because I think that it's the most important thing that we and everyone who's listening to us is actually aware of right now. And then what's up on your side?
Very, very interesting. Now, here's something that I really find very interesting from a story perspective. And I want to be as politically correct as I can with this story.
Watch your
because
words, Chief.
This can turn very messy very quickly. 2 weeks ago, first of all, let me ask you, Bonga, what was the first PC or laptop you ever used in your whole life?
PC.
What brand was it?
I think a majority of us will say Microsoft.
Right? The PC itself, the name.
Oh,
Because the first thing I ever used was an IBM.
Oh, no, you're right. It was actually an IBM.
An IBM.
It was an IBM.
And, you know, for the longest time, I had no idea what IBM stood for, but it stands for International Business Machines. And they no longer make machines. So it's very, very interesting. But in the last 2 weeks, IBM announced that they have a new CEO. And his name is Arvind Krishna, who was the head of the cloud business at IBM. He takes over from Jeannie Rometty, who's been CEO for 8 years, who, by the way, was the first female CEO of IBM. And I think in the history of IBM, this Arvind Krishna is only the 8th CEO or something ridiculous like that. So they've been around for 130 years and they've only had less than 10 CEOs, which is a big lesson for guys
and
out there on
almost one
leadership.
of a very handful to be a female at the top of that level.
Absolutely, there's very few. There's very few female CEOs that run S&P 500 companies or Forbes 500 companies. But yeah, this story is more interesting for me because there's now this wave taking place in American tech, where if we are in trouble as a company, if we are losing market share, we must bring in a certain kind of demographic of person to come and help save us. I kid you not. This is what big American tech has done. So in the last 5 or 6 years, the following people have been appointed into their jobs. And you will see what I mean. Google and Alphabet hired a little-known guy called Sundar Pichai from India.
I actually didn't know him until one of the Google conferences like a year or two ago.
Exactly. And he was seen as a superstar at Google. And he's also known as a nice guy. Microsoft hired a guy called, and this name always kills Bonga, Satya Nadella. And he is also from India. And he is also A nice guy.
What kills me about his name though is how it's written. Psyche, as if like it's tossed and you've eaten or something like that. That cracks me up.
Now, here's a company that we all used to use and then it fell off and all of a sudden came back as well. Adobe hired another guy called Shantanu Narayan. And where's he from? India.
India.
And the final company that I'd like to tell you about is MasterCard. And
Oh.
they also
Oh,
hired a guy
yes,
called
yes, yes.
AJ Bangra,
Yeah,
who's
no.
from India.
Yeah, with the turban thing.
Now,
Yeah, I've seen him. I've seen.
this thing is really starting to take over Silicon Valley. And there are a lot of other talented Indian executives who are running around in the US doing good things, turning companies around. Now, all four of these CEOs that I mentioned took over when all four of these companies were in precarious positions. Google, they were facing the Andy Rubin scandal.
Oh yeah, yes.
Larry Page, and
The Andy Rubin scandal is that of the Android exec that was paid
Correct.
200 million because of sexual harassment.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
asked to leave, right?
absolutely, and
Okay.
that particular pay package was apparently decided upon by Sergey Brin, Larry Page, and Eric Schmidt, who used to be the CEO of Google.
Imagine. Patriarchy.
Satya
serving itself.
Nadella took over Microsoft when it was becoming absolutely irrelevant. Some of us wondered whether or not Microsoft would even exist in 20 years' time. And look at what he's done with the Xbox. I still can't believe there are people out there who prefer Xbox over PlayStation, but they are.
And it keeps getting more and more heated.
Look at what he's done with Microsoft Azure, which is their cloud business, which competes with Amazon Web
Amazon,
Services.
yeah.
And look at what he has
And
done.
it's actually leading the market in
Exactly.
cloud computing.
Look at what he has done with Office, where he has turned it from selling physical Office on a once-off basis to a person who buys a new laptop to selling it as software as a service.
Yes,
so you
online
subscribe
subscriptions.
to Office on an annual basis, on a monthly basis, and you get the whole stack, or you get pieces of the stack.
And it's actually quite
And
an exciting product now.
Absolutely,
To be honest.
absolutely,
I'm-
he's made those changes.
I like how the path that Microsoft has taken.
Look at the changes that Shantanu Narayan has done at Adobe. I mean, we can still remember 4 or 5 years ago when Acrobat Reader was dead as a PDF reader.
Yeah, it was dull. It was very dull.
And if you look at what they've done now, and if you look at some of the other things that they're doing in software as a service, awesome stuff. AJ at MasterCard, I mean, people forget that MasterCard and Visa were amongst the first fintech plays that we ever had. Those are fintech plays where they process
Yeah.
payments. And if you look at the stock prices of any of these four companies, since these guys have been in charge, you are looking at 100, 200, 300% returns. Google, $1 trillion company. Microsoft, $1 trillion company. MasterCard, and its biggest competitor Visa, if you had bought them in the year 2000 or in the year 2010, you would be up double, triple, or quadruple what you had invested
investment.
at that time, and the same for Adobe. So IBM is doing exactly the same thing with Arvind Krishna, and of course they've just acquired a company called Red Hat to be able to compete with Microsoft, Google, and Amazon Web Services in cloud computing. And of course, they had basically the first self-aware piece of AI technology with Watson, and they still haven't commercialized it
Watson
to
till
what
now.
we thought
It will
Watson
be.
could be commercialized as. So there's a lot for Arvind to do, but if you look at what the Indian CEOs have done in the past, it's possible that he could be the fifth to do the same in the tech world.
Well, that definitely does put a lot of pressure on him to deliver, because clearly the other guys have came to show themselves as superstars. So that's something that it needs to be kept in mind, that their experiences are not the same. But also, it then tells you first and foremost about the power of diversity.
Yes.
Because those people come in with a different and a novel approach in what is seen as a classic American company that does classic American things, and that they only know what they know about their little world, and that they are the world leaders, and that everyone is supposed to follow them. I mean, we were having a conversation before starting this recording about how I was talking about why American football is like rugby, but almost different to rugby with almost similar rules. Then you
Yeah.
start seeing all the other sports that they have where this thing is a trend.
Yep.
So then if you're having an American company that always has American leadership and American only staff complement, you also get the same kind of dullness in approach in the in the ways of working. I think that is why South Africa is such a great place for business, because even though it's largely populated by black people, it's diverse in the form of culture and
Yeah.
language to the people that of all the people that are in here. So
Yes.
that in its own right proves to you that diversity really has a path that can drive things forward. And countries that are less diverse tend to be struggling, like in the US, because if you look at companies in Australia, for example,
Yeah.
Australia has almost perfected the art of diversity and is quite thriving in that. That's what Canada is trying
Yep.
to move into as well.
and
So
and they have opened up literally their borders to expats. They've opened up their borders to guys with skill from foreign countries. So
and a lot of these
people can move
countries,
to Canada.
are very open to that. I mean, I have a friend who literally left SA tonight, this evening, to go and start a new job in Kuwait. At the National Bank there. His expertise is in testing, I believe. So he's been hired over that side to go and start a whole new life there. And I think that it's quite exciting to do that. The one other thing that I wanted to add on to what you were talking about is that this actually speaks onto a larger picture of how this is a video that I actually shared on my Twitter account earlier, of how India is actually becoming its own Silicon Valley.
Yes.
So a
Yes.
whole lot of these big companies are actually outsourcing the work that is being done, outsourcing their IT work, and it's outsourced to India. South Africa is no different as well, especially when it comes to developers and software testers. We hire a lot of those guys from outside of the country. They come in with those expert skills, and when they leave school, coming here straight directly, and then that's all that they do. And now, even another more interesting thing is that a lot of previously it would be the top performers in business or in IT business, that side, or IT work, would make it to the top, then make sure that they leave India as fast as they can, and then they never
Yes.
come back, right?
But that's
How
changing.
that's changing now because of the growth in IT and the IT opportunity. They actually leave, those that leave, and then
Go learn,
they
come
go
back.
learn, come back, and some are not even leaving at all. They're
Correct.
saying we're now trying to fix our country and put it to make sure that it actually is becoming a world leader.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look, there are a number of big businesses in India that have been built on exactly what you're talking about. Infosys was built on the back of that. Wipro, Genpact, Tata. People think that Tata only makes cars. They don't know that a
Tata
lot
is a
of
conglomerate.
Mahindra. And so you do have a lot of this happening in India. And the recent one, actually, an interesting one, is a company called Flipkart, I think, if I remember correctly, which was recently bought by Walmart and used to actually be owned or partly owned by South Africa's Naspers, the big Indian shopping business. I think Naspers got $2 billion from Walmart for that acquisition. So yes, that is why what I wanted to get to was you've got India as a country which is a melting pot for talent, both in the tech space but increasingly in other spaces as well, such as finance, such as engineering, um, and those types of fields. And another place which is you're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years, which is doing exactly the same thing, but they've sort of flipped it around, was what you were talking about, is China. So what China is doing is they actually pushing people out of the country to go and pick up those necessary skills. So whether they send them to, you've seen plenty of Chinese people on the African continent, whether it be in Zambia, Uganda, South Africa, Rwanda, on the west coast of the U.S., going to Stanford, University of California, Berkeley, or going to Boston, to Harvard or MIT, going into France and Switzerland or Spain, learning those particular skills, and then coming back home and applying those skills in the Chinese economy.
But then China is a different kind of devil, though. We need to keep in mind that their intentions are quite questionable to a certain extent in how they operate. I mean, exactly to your point of what you're talking about now about China getting people out to learn and coming back. It's also in the same breath getting people out to put in their own influence so that that place changes to what they want.
Absolutely.
So if you think about the China, this new one belt
One
thing of
road,
bridges,
one belt, one road. Yes.
one belt, one road, and how that is they will put in expensive infrastructure in a country that can't afford it, and then they turn around and say that payback is by the country giving this debt to them. Yeah, China is a little, but I get what you mean. So you just have to keep an open mind when you're dealing with China specifically.
You always have to keep an open mind, regardless of whether you're dealing with China or the US. So there are two things that I would say to that. One is China is the most populous country on the planet. So we should never think that they do not want to be the biggest in terms of economy, in terms of influence, in terms of how they move around on a global sphere. That's it's sort of for them sounds unfair that they are not the biggest economy already. So it's already a fight between them and the US because of that. The second one is that, you know, what China is doing today is no different to what the French did in the 16th century, to what the British did in the 18th and the 17th century, to the Ottoman Empire, to the Roman Empire, to the American Empire. There's no difference. It's just that we live in an age of technology where the world is so integrated that everybody sees you coming. So no one saw the Romans coming. No one saw the British coming. But we can see the Chinese coming. That's the only difference that you've got. But how we stop them is going to be very difficult because they do have 1.4 billion people, so they can actually throw them around. I mean, if we go back to the coronavirus story, Wuhan is a city of 11 million people, bigger than New York, bigger than Madrid, bigger than Paris, bigger than London, way bigger than Joburg. So think about Wuhan, the city that no one outside of China knew existed, is bigger than all of those cities which we all know exist.
Well, it's going to be an interesting thing to see, but I think that we should really keep in mind that India is coming and it's coming quite
India's
fast
coming.
and quite hard. So
very true.
If you want to be one of those people that have been underestimating it or didn't know much about it except for being a very populous country, you really might want to open your eyes a bit more and learn about the country, because what it's coming with might have an impact to you as a common man on the street, even in SA right now, because any of the products that are South African built that are mostly common or famous most likely have been built by a resource that is either based in India or was imported from India to come and work on that particular tech product in the country. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, moving along, this afternoon I found a very interesting article about how web traffic globally has increased, and most of the web traffic is actually driven by mobile. So what this report says that on average, globally, of the top 100 websites that receive web traffic, they receive around about 223 billion unique site visits each month. That's how big it is. This is an 8% jump from 2018 and 11.8% jump if you're looking at from 2017. And what is also interesting about this, though, is that I remember my stats from here, is that people are now spend less time on each page that is visited on their phone. So when you go to a page, you quickly log in, log out, and you spend, on average, that is dropped by 49 seconds, the time that people spend on each of the sites that they visit. And then now you might wonder, which sites do people visit? Can you take a wild guess which one is number one category of sites that they visit the most?
Category? Social media?
Nope.
Really? Google?
No. Talking category, like was it health, sports, whatever? Think of it that way.
Oh.
Which was number one? On mobile.
On mobile? Probably sport.
Nope. It's actually porn.
Oh, that makes sense. I thought of saying it and then being, this is a podcast.
So porn leads the amount of visits that the amount of web traffic globally on a mobile. And we're talking about an 80-20 split here.
Seriously? Sure.
And then it's closely.
You guys need help, man.
So if I'm checking here, let me just check.
So 80% of porn searches
in fact,
or
90%.
porn traffic is mobile.
Yes, mobile. So either through a
Actually, that
phone
makes
or
sense.
an iPad.
Yeah. I mean, who would want to watch? It's so cumbersome to watch a video on a laptop
True.
or a PC.
True. So
To do it while on the move, sort of that makes sense to me. So what was second?
So the top five is adult, then it's gambling.
Gambling makes sense.
Food and drinks, pets and animals, health, then it's community and society, sports and lifestyle.
Sports and lifestyle is quite low. So gambling makes sense to me considering the sudden rush and increase in online sports betting.
Yes.
I mean,
yes,
that's
indeed.
been a big thing for the past 2 or 3 years. Whether it's Triple Eight Bet in SA, we know Betway is very, very popular. Sort of waned a bit as 2020 has started, but I mean, towards the end of 2019, Betway was like the biggest thing in South Africa.
I mean, it has 2 billboards on the M1. Alone, M1 South, if you're coming off from Woodmead driving towards town.
And I'm assuming they had a massive marketing drive because that's all people were talking about. I mean,
Of course.
in
So,
October,
I mean, to
November.
be able to invest on it that much, and then of course how that it innovates to partner with certain institutions. I mean, we know that it's partnering with a certain financial institution
Yeah.
for people to be able to draw out their money faster once they've made their winnings. So it is quite an amazing feat.
To me, what always interests me, sorry to
Yeah.
disturb you, what always interests me is two things. One, we tend to forget how young the internet actually
Really
is. I mean,
Yeah.
the internet is younger than you and I.
In context, yes, because it's like what 91,
Early 90s.
early 90s.
Yeah,
yes.
well, let's call it 91 because I think that's when World Wide Web was formally formed. So let's call it 91. That's younger than both you and I, and younger than many of our listeners. Some obviously are a bit younger, but you wouldn't have
probably
been
as
old
old as
enough. Some of you weren't old enough to do anything when the internet became a thing. So that's number one. The second thing is I would love to see stats of how much that web traffic has exponentially grown since 2007. And the reason why I've picked 2007, that was the year of the first iPhone.
Oh yeah.
So-
yeah. True.
When we talk about now porn searches being 80-20, 90-10 from a mobile and PC perspective, it would be interesting to see at what point that inflection point occurred for that allowed that web traffic to increase so much. Because to be honest, today the phone, and I people can talk about LGs, Samsungs, whatever, but the iPhone for me is what has dramatically increased people's access to the internet and their ability to do things because of what this device can do.
And probably also that desire to trust their phone that
Yes.
it gets secure enough for them to be able to
Absolutely.
execute those
Because-
transactions. Because the other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about the point of reference is I'd like to see the data on reliance on mobile since 2008, given the world crash.
Yes.
From that point, coming from that point forward, yes, 2007, the iPhone was still quite an expensive, not so easy to attain kind of device. So it may have been there, but it would have been innovative for the top earners that it could afford it. But I think that in terms of the businesses and them relying on mobile from 2008 coming all the way to now, how has that made an impact? But anyway, moving along. So here's now another interesting thing. We've already said the increase in 223 billion visits, and that the mostly visited sites was mostly adult content. Now, the other part of this is that news sites
Yeah.
lost traffic by 4 billion.
News sites lost traffic. Oh, but that makes sense.
News sites lost traffic.
I've got Facebook and Twitter for
4
my news. I do not need Sunday Times, Business Day, The Star, Citizen,
Daily Sun.
Daily.
No
Twitter's my
manga.
daily sun. Facebook is my daily sun.
True.
I mean,
And you would have gotten all the facts on there before you even read the article. The
absolutely. And
first place.
I mean, if you look at the way in which information providers are now using Twitter, they've got some of the biggest pages out there, and they catch on to so-called scoops now as quickly as we catch on to them. The only thing that they do now, and I've seen them improve, is when a story breaks online, is they're able to then go and investigate deeper and come back with the full story that tells you how it happened. So a classic example for me is we all found out about Carlos Ghosn disappearing from Japan
Yes.
to
Yes.
Lebanon on
Yes.
Twitter. And only 3, 4, 5 weeks later, were the news sites now starting to piece together that the fact that he got into a car in Tokyo and went to Osaka. Then he
Then he
got into that
flew-
musical instrument box or whatever it was. So
It's like a spy movie.
it's like
man.
a proper spy movie, but we all were watching it on Twitter rather than actually reading it in the papers on a Sunday morning.
True. So I mean that's that's another thing. But interestingly enough, speaking of social media, its traffic remained the same at about 12.8 billion visits.
That's interesting. That's
month.
very, very interesting.
So it remained the same. However, the top 10 of the most famous websites increased in popularity and reach by over 167 billion visits of the top 10 combined.
And are all those top 10 porn sites?
Well, you know the top 10: YouTube, Google,
Well, yeah,
Facebook.
YouTube is very popular.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a very interesting thought. It actually ties in nicely with just something we can touch on before we get to a new segment of the show.
Oh, by the
is-
way, before you move on, I just wanted to add
Yes.
something else. Yahoo lost 33.6% traffic in 2018, and that continues to happen even now. So it's really seeing fires.
Hey,
But then
Yahoo.
YouTube is outperforming Facebook in terms of visits by a mile. Facebook is peaked at about 130 million visits in 2019 as of this report. YouTube reached 180
So
million
YouTube
visits.
is, we'll say, second most popular after porn. So you guys watch a lot of porn and you watch a lot of YouTube. But it's good that you watch a lot of YouTube. YouTube has a lot of interesting things on there.
Indeed.
And
A whole
I
lot-
learn more from YouTube than I do from anything else these
Yeah,
days. You
people
just
are
plug in
learning-
whatever.
People are learning a bit more from there. So
And that's very interesting that you talk about web traffic and all of that stuff, because here's a nice paragraph that I just want to read to touch on that. Before the age of awareness, people conversed via blog posts, threads in online discussion forums, or email chain. You read someone's missive, pondered it, and wrote it back. It was newfangled and digital, sure, but it nonetheless echoed the tempo of industrial life. The postal service in the Victorian period, bickering with fellow citizens in letters to the editor. Did you ever write a letter to an editor when you read a story and then complained about?
No, hell no. I know that
That used to be a very big thing to do. You
It
read the
used
Sunday
to, if
paper
you
and
remember,
then you used to write back
not
saying,
not even the Sunday papers. Ever remember the thing called Reader's Digest?
yes, yes.
People used to write back to
Exactly.
the editors quite a lot back then.
And that, by the way, is, if you think about it, the non-digital or the non-back and forth that we now know today as Facebook and Twitter.
Sounds old, ne?
Think about how young email is as a technology. Think about how young blog posts are as a technology, or online discussion forums, some of which are still used. And yet, the big things that people have gravitated towards are Twitter and Facebook, all because of their immediacy in terms of being able to respond to people's status updates. I mean, do we even still call status updates? I mean, that used to be a big thing when people used to actually think about their status update.
Statuses, yeah.
I'm currently cooking. Do you remember those ones? or
We have to, by the way, not give BlackBerry its props on that.
Yes.
Because if you think about BBM, it was one of the market leaders in statuses.
Absolutely.
People were obsessed in having people having others in that BBM so they know what their status is. We have a whole song from what is this group? Liquid Deep.
Liquid deep, check BBM.
Check BBM.
Yep.
Which is a whole entire there was an entire jam on statuses.
Absolutely. And I mean, the statuses was the start of it. And what ended up happening was we all became used to being able to express ourselves in 140 characters or less. Do you remember those days? Now we have
Indeed.
280, but I mean, there
Still,
was a time when we
um,
were happy
It
with
affected
140 or
it
less.
actually affected how I do my writing because now I try to make
You had
it
to
as
think, how short and concise can I
yeah,
be?
short and concise, and that's how I write my documents now. How I even try and speak as well whenever I try and in conversation. So I think that it's quite important.
And now people write or think in threads. Now threads are the big thing. They spend their time threading. These are my thoughts. They spend their time threading stories. And
Which some of
that
them
takes
may be
us
fake.
back. Well, some of them might be fake, but that takes us back to the email, the blog post era, or the online discussion forums, because that is the back and forth that used to happen on those particular blog posts. And I mean, we talk about when you talk about Facebook lagging YouTube or social media as an activity and news lagging pornography. Um, but all social media has reformed itself or made itself around those two or three things, which are the status update and the stream or the timeline. Those are now how everything looks. Instagram has a timeline. Twitter has a timeline. I haven't been on Facebook in 2 years, so I don't know how the homepage looks now. Is it
It
still called the
basically
news
has
feed?
Basically has a timeline if you think about it. Still a news feed, but it's the
I mean,
same thing.
newsfeed was the biggest thing ever when it came out back in
That's the same
in the
thing,
late
yeah.
2000s. Um, we now speak in hashtags.
Whole companies of marketing in itself, when you think about it, is literally a series of hashtags and engagement.
And if you think about all of these things, are actually, back to your point, have increased the amount of time we spend online. They have increased the amount of web traffic because all of those things are accessing the internet. And now humans are able to log in and log out whenever they need to. And I mean, people are spending what, 2, 3, 4 hours a day on the internet, searching stuff, looking
They
after
are,
stuff.
but they're not spending too much time on certain pages. So
Yes.
it's about you
They-
log in
they are
many
favorites.
yeah you log in on many pages, but when you log in, as soon as you come in and you leave, or maybe you're looking for a certain piece
Yes.
of information that's already on the page as you come in, and then you get it at that point in time, then you leave almost instantaneously,
So this-
as fast as you get it.
This reminds me of an old thing that retailers used to speak about called share of wallet. If you remember, we used to fight for your wallet. So Bonga had, let's say, disposable income of 1,000 rand a month, and that's what Bonga had. And Pick and Pay would fight for their $300, and Checkers or Shoprite would fight for their $300, and Woolies would fight for its $300, and then Poor Spa would fight for the $100 that was remaining. Now you've got the same thing, where let's say a person has 8 hours or 10 hours, that is their share of wallet from an internet perspective.
It's share of time, basically.
Exactly. 3 hours is spent on YouTube, an hour is spent on Facebook, 2 hours is spent on Google search, another hour is spent on Instagram, because you got to get that content out, and then finally before you sleep you got to get them fire tweets out with 2 more hours. And so it's a similar type of thing where you're fighting for that person's attention, and their share of time, because why? You need to advertise to them and generate that revenue.
And so I think I found this quite important, because I think that as we are continuously growing as individuals that are crazy about creating content, we are also in the business of creating content. People that want to have side businesses where they're selling something or offering a service, all of that in any business, you now have to start thinking, if I am going to start this business or I want to grow it, how do I get into the mobile to the mobile wave for this to reach as many people as possible? Because clearly people are still about the internet, but they are not necessarily about desktop, they are more about mobile.
Yes.
And so how do you build how do you build your work if you're working like in a professional environment? How do you take your tasks right now, make them work for you in mobile?
Yep.
Or if you're a person who's starting something on the side or a business, how do you make your thing so innovative that it includes mobile in some way in your process?
Yep.
So
Very,
such
very
that
important.
a person has the ability and power to interact with the services no matter wherever they are, and still get the same experience that they would get if they were to physically be at your store or you physically came to them.
No. Very, very
And
important.
so, if you listen to this and you have a bright idea in your head about a business, or you are a person who's growing your business currently or running a business, try and start to think that how your mobile strategy, how is it looking like right now? Do you have one? If yes, how is it performing for you? Can you make it a better experience, or you have the devices not the center, but as close to centricity in operations as you can, so that to make it more efficient and accessible for everyone. So perhaps those are the kind of things that you need to put into thought in for 2020 to grow your business.
Cool. No, very,
Yeah.
very interesting. So, new segment on the show for 2020, because you know we got to bring nice things. Bonga,
Sure.
who's your tech winner of the week?
My tech winner of the week has to be YouTube,
Okay.
Google. So for those of you that don't know, Google released its performance results, financial results, not so long ago, and it turns out that on YouTube alone, Google has made $15 billion in revenue.
Phew, that's a lot of money.
That is a big, big, big win. You might think that it might be a GDP of a small country. It might be a GDP of a small country. And I think that it actually shows in how the amount of time that people spend on YouTube learning stuff, creating content, consuming content. I mean, you know, we have people that are top earners. I think in SA, from a South African point of view, a lot of the guys that are posting content about travel,
Yeah.
makeup. There's like a makeup channel almost
And they're monetizing
everywhere.
their channels.
And it is because the views are doing great, and it's
Yeah.
it's quite amazing to see that everyone now, you really think that you get a phone, you buy some lighting equipment, you buy a tripod,
And you start
get a
recording.
mic, you can start this thing in under a week.
I think this is number one. This is the first time that Alphabet has shown us the earnings of YouTube. They've always shown Google together as one. It's the first time that they ever separated out YouTube's earnings. What I really find interesting, when Google initially purchased YouTube in 2005 for $1 billion, everybody thought they overpaid, because YouTube at the time was still young in terms of video content, and they had no path to revenue generation. So from 0 to 15, number one, obviously, is already a success story, but I don't think anybody thought it was that big. So that's actually quite an impressive number.
And so I think that the whole point of moving to YouTube Premium though might actually boost those numbers. Because if you get a hold of people that are willing to pay premium to not have any to not have any ads on their site and enjoy the experience, it might work out better for them. Like
So,
I'm
here's
one of those people that currently are paying for YouTube Premium, and you might think that I'm wasting money, but honestly, as a person who's been using it for the past couple of months, it's worth the investment. I can promise you that much. So that's why YouTube is my winner.
cool. My tech winner of the week, and he didn't even do anything. He just happened to be in Cape Town last week Friday playing tennis with Trevor Noah, Roger Federer, and Rafael Nadal. And then I wake up this morning or yesterday, and apparently he'd commissioned a yacht. It turns out he didn't say anything about the yacht, but he went viral. Mr.
Swag.
Bill Gates.
Yeah, I saw about that. And it was worth $500 million.
So 650 million US dollars, which
my
equates to
God.
about 10 billion rand.
Oh my God.
And
I
there are very
had-
few people with 10 billion rand.
So speaking of that, I actually was in Cape Town no, this is not last
2
year.
years ago.
No, 2018.
And you saw Paul Allen's yacht.
Paul Allen's yacht. A work of art. And that yacht is about it was valued at $100 million, I think.
So that was, at the time it was built, that was the biggest yacht in the world. And then, of course, billionaires like outnumbering each other. So Roman Abramovich went and built a bigger one. Those of you that don't know Paul Allen was the co-founder of Microsoft who died, passed away in 2018.
Due to
Um,
cancer, yeah.
yeah, exactly. What I like, at least they told us about the yacht. So the yacht is apparently hydrogen powered. Oof, very,
Okay.
very interesting. Complete with an infinity pool, helipad,
Hey, man.
spa, and gym.
Eh.
But guys, stop saying Bill Gates commissioned to order this thing because he couldn't afford Gucci. Please, let's just stop that discussion.
Coach is beyond his, it's no longer his play grade. He doesn't even care about
By
that.
the way, what I really did you watch the tennis on Friday? Did you see any of the tennis?
Oh, no, unfortunately, honestly, I was not.
It
I
was the
didn't really
funniest
watch
thing
it.
ever. So there's Rafa Nadal wearing his um, personal Richard Mille RM23. Rafa Nadal is the biggest endorser of Richard Mille watches. There's Roger Federer on the other side playing in a platinum Rolex Sky Dweller, which is the watch that he endorses. Both of those watches cost between 500,000 to 2 million rand
Yikes.
retail price. And we all know Trevor Noah is a big collector of watches. He has Richard Milles, he has Audemars Piguets, and he has Patek Philippe's, as well as Rolexes. I didn't catch a glimpse of what he was wearing, but I'm sure he was wearing nothing. But there was Uncle Bill wearing the watch that he's always been spotted wearing for the last 25 years, a Casio.
Swag. Why touch it when it works? I mean, so yeah, I think that's quite interesting.
Cool. Now let's move on to our tech losers of the week. And Bonga has a very interesting one. I like this one.
So my one actually, I wanted to say, I think I have two. So
Okay.
I want to actually mention both of them. The first one being Telcom, obviously.
Telcom.
Because if you followed me for a while, you know I've had many
Loyal customer.
servicing complaints regarding them, but I've been with them for a number of years. In fact, my current service provider for my phone is Telcom, and I'm not about to change anytime soon. However, an article came out this morning about how they're saying that WhatsApp is partly to blame for the retrenchment because of how people they are no longer utilizing your good old SMSs to communicate with each other. People are making less calls. People are relying, especially with WhatsApp. I mean, with the rise in the efficiency of WhatsApp video calls, the efficiency of WhatsApp text messaging, which is free. People want to take that as an alternative to a paid for service that used to be a big thing. And I mean, we now know that there's been quite a decline in copper sales, also ADSL. People are no longer taking up ADSL package to a point that Telcom even stopped mentioning ADSL sales whenever they release their results. They're no longer selling ADSL as a product to anyone. So we have tons and tons of copper lying underneath us as an infrastructure, but that no one is really utilizing. So I think that they are really losing out on that. It's quite sad that there are so many jobs that are at risk, whereas they
But
should be appropriating those correctly, maybe.
let's not blame WhatsApp and fiber for the loss of jobs, please. Please.
Like
I'm not
that.
an insider at Telcom, but surely there's a better explanation for the job losses.
Yeah, so well, I mean, there's always easier to blame the external environment than not putting some blame in your environment and probably a lack in foresight in how
Your inability to plan.
plan change. And I think Telcom would have had much more reach in selling fiber, but I don't think that they've been selling it as well or as aggressively as the other businesses because of probably partly how big it is,
Yep.
maybe then some also some level of bureaucracy.
Yep.
So it
No,
definitely,
absolutely.
there's more to it than just blaming WhatsApp or WhatsApp or any other of these new
New technologies.
emerging technologies. The other one is what happened in the U.S. about the Iowa caucus. So, for those of you that don't know, America right now is going through a round where the respective parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, are going state by state, choosing who's going to be vying for the for presidency elections
in
later
November this year.
later in the year in November. So in one of the states in Iowa, the Democratic Party decided to use an app to count their votes for the caucus, as opposed to paper-based as how we normally do. And the state had actually promised that it's going to work fine. It's been built alongside with the Democrats and it's going to work correctly. But then guess what? On the date of voting, after the votes have been casted in and it's supposed to time to start counting the votes, the app crashed. And when it crashed,
Or at least they claimed it crashed.
but all in all, it crashed and it disappeared with a number of votes, which delayed the counting by more than 6 hours, I believe.
We didn't get
And
the
then-
results for
No,
3 to 4 days.
Yeah, 3 to 4 days.
And even
yes.
when they came, they couldn't declare who won.
Well, eventually they declared that Pete Buttigieg won Iowa, but
which is, by the way, his home state.
But then
He is the mayor of Des Moines. Or
yes,
somewhere there.
Maine or something there. But the funny thing is that he won in the same way as how Trump won the elections. So he won through something called the Electoral College, where they do not count how the total number of votes, but they're counting who voted for you. And not everyone is the same. Not everyone's vote weighs the same.
Certain districts have more power than other
others.
districts.
Usually
Very
the rural districts have more power than the
urban districts.
Urban,
Because the urban districts are who vote for Democrats, and the rurals are who vote for Republicans.
mostly. And
Yeah.
so it happened that Bernie Sanders won the popular vote, but Pete won the actual vote because of their supposed electoral college.
Now,
That's like quite complicated.
Tomorrow they go to New Hampshire, which was one of the first cities in the US after the colonials arrived from Britain. Anyway, tomorrow they go to New Hampshire. I hope they are using physical ballots.
I hope so too, because it'd be interesting if they try and do that. But I think that app is going to be put on freeze until until another time, hopefully. And you?
No, I like those losers. My loser of the week is a term that we've been hearing for the past couple of weeks,
Yeah.
and it didn't work. Philosophy.
What do you mean philosophy? I'm not
So
following.
if you remember at the beginning of the year, our good old friend load shedding returned.
Yeah.
And our friends at ESCOM promised that they would put in place a philosophy where, between the hours of 4 to 6 in the afternoon and 6 to 9 a.m. in the morning,
There's no load
we would not be load shed. As a way of not disturbing peak hour, rush hour traffic, and when people needed to shower in the morning and get ready for work. But what happened, Bong, is
opposite.
we've just completed a full week of stage 2 load shedding.
Eish, bruh.
Where has the philosophy gone now?
Well, philosophies are nothing more than just a concept, right? So I guess it's one thing to speak on, it's just another thing to execute it. We will never know.
So, guys, if any of you are interested in studying a simple concept called supply and demand, your case study should be ESCOM and its inability to deliver power, because load shedding. So you can have philosophies, you can make promises, you can talk, but load shedding as a manifestation is simply a shortfall between power demanded or electricity demand and the available supply. So if the demand is 20,000 and your supply is 15,000, you can promise localized load shedding, you can promise artificial bringing back of the power between 4 and 6 or 6 and 9, whatever the times you choose. But simply put, if demand cannot meet, if supply cannot meet demand, you have an issue. So philosophies aside, ESCOM, you are my loser of the week.
Yeah, no, it's true. Hopefully they get back on back to their senses. I know that they said they are putting us on stage 1 this week, which apparently is supposed to be lesser in time than the others, but that yet remains to be seen. So we'll see. So the one other thing that we're gonna try and keep up with as well is providing tech tips where we can where we can find one that we think is useful to you as our listener. And one of them for this week is that it's just a reminder that for anyone who is still using Windows 7, you need to upgrade to Windows 10
Yes.
as soon as possible, because Windows has cut out support for Windows 7, and what that means essentially is that it is no longer releasing any kind of software patches or upgrades. So if you have a virus that attacks Windows 7 right now, Microsoft will not be able to do anything for you. So you have to upgrade that to Windows 10 as soon as you possibly can, and you can be able to do it for free. We will share a article or a link to CNET on our social media pages where you can find this information. But essentially, there's a tool that Microsoft released that still works, that allows you to go there and then you can you download a copy of Windows 10 onto your machine, and it does the upgrade for you, provided that the copy of Windows 7 that you have is legit. So obviously, if you got a cracked version of Windows 7 somewhere, and you installed that on your machine, this will definitely won't work for you. So just that's one small thing that we're just going to share on this episode with you guys, and how to get that information.
Cool. No, great tech tip of the week. And guys, please, during the course of the week or on the weekend, if you have any tech tips that you would like us to discuss on the show, or if you have any questions, send them through. Tech winner of the week, let us know.
What you
Tech
think,
loser of
yeah.
the week, let us know. But again, another great episode. I am Tabiso Shabalala, and you can find me at Tabiso_XT. That's Bonga Mangaile. You can find him at _Bonga, but most of you follow him already. And we are Tech Alley Pod on all platforms, or including SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. What else? Where else are we?
Spotify.
Spotify. Oh, yes, we're
Apple
on Spotify
Podcast,
now.
Spotify, yes. We're on Spotify,
And
been on
of course, we're
Spotify.
on Twitter and on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. We're on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah, we're everywhere, man. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. But yeah, once again, thank you for listening in for this week. Don't forget to get in touch with us, like our Tabiso has mentioned. And yeah, till next week, man.
We out. Cheers.
Cheers, cheers.